This boy is envied by all males for living with the 5 most beautiful girls in the world. Only the boy himself knows how miserable his life truly is. The boy's name is Erida. He's never had a girlfriend his entire life, all because of his 2 older sisters and 3 younger sisters. His youngest sister Katono can't reach her own back when bathing, so she always asks Erida to scrub it for her. From morning till night, Erida constantly sees these beautiful girls around him. As a result, his standards for romance have become impossibly high, and he becomes reluctant to pursue any real relationship. In addition, because Erida is a boy, he has to compromise every time he quarrels with his sisters. One day, Erida is chatting with his brother Shion, and he asks Shion for advice on how to get a girlfriend. At this moment, the 5 sisters appear together. The eldest sister Bonri has a humorous personality and often teases her younger siblings. The second sister Seiha thinks logically like a programmer. The third sister Uka suspects Erida of being perverted and corrupting Shion, always ordering her pet dog to punish him. The fourth sister Minami loves sports but frequently accidentally hurts Erida. The youngest Katono is extremely shy and rarely speaks. Erida tries hard to avoid his sisters, spending most of his time with Shion instead, but Uka never gives him that chance. Uka and Erida are fraternal twins, so they are both in their sophomore year of high school now. Uka often comes to Erida to borrow notes, and she actively helps Erida find a girlfriend in order to prevent Erida from having perverted thoughts about her sisters. During the chat, Uka learns that his friend Yokoyama is Erida's crush, and Uka plans to invite Yokoyama to hang out on the weekend. Erida asks her to mind her own business, and the two of them start to quarrel. At this moment, Katono is peeking at Erida's picture, with her cheeks turning red. The day of Katono's birthday arrives. Everyone dresses in formal attire, but the relaxed atmosphere soon shatters with the sound of an argument. Minami has lost Uka's Apple earphones. Uka becomes furious and declares she doesn't want a sister like Minami. Erida reminds them that they are all relatives and should not say such hurtful words to each other. Although they don't care much about Erida usually, his sisters still think of him as an older brother when he's serious. That's when Kaname, the father of these children, comes in. Next, Kaname announces a big news. The 7 children of this family are all adopted by him. Only Minami and Shion are fraternal twins here. The rest share no blood relation. This means the claim about Erida and Uka being twins was also a lie. The kids fall into heavy silence, with their faces unreadable. It takes Erida hours to process the shock. After he thinks about it for a long time, he finally believes what their foster father said, as their hair colors are completely different. They couldn't possibly all be related. The evening hangs heavy after Kaname leaves, and the 7 kids hold a family meeting. Bonri, adopted around age 4, has hazy memories of something special but keeps quiet without knowing why. Hours pass with them sitting in thick silence, all stewing in mixed feelings. At this moment, Uka is asking Shion about something that happened in the past. At that time, they accidentally saw Erida on top of Katono. No matter how they questioned him, Erida refused to explain. Shion is one of the few people who knows the truth, and he helps Erida clear up the misunderstanding. In fact, that day, Katono confessed to her brother Erida, and she was very emotional at the time. When Erida tried calming her down, they tripped. Erida takes the blame in silence because exposing the truth would have had a bad impact on Katono. After learning the truth, Uka becomes even more worried. Now that they're not blood related, Katono is very likely to develop special feelings for Erida again. And sure enough, Katono does exactly what Uka predicted. Erida tries to calm down by taking a shower, but unexpectedly encounters Katono, who didn't lock the door. Erida decides to come back later, but Katono calls out to him, hoping her brother will help wash her back like before. Suddenly, Katono hugs Erida and confesses once again. Luckily, Erida has principles. He tells Katono teenagers often mix up respect and crushes. As her brother, he'll keep watching over her until the day she becomes a bride. Then, Erida rushes back to his room, only to find Seiha there as well. But something even more terrifying happens. Seiha pushes Erida onto the bed and presses her face against his chest. Erida panics, thinking Seiha likes him like Katono does, and cold sweat drips down his neck. But it's just a misunderstanding. It turns out Seiha had been heading to the bath earlier and overheard Katono's conversation with him. Seiha has always been rational. She thinks Katono has confused her affection for her brother with romantic feelings. To prevent Erida from developing any strange feelings for others, Seiha deliberately initiates a close physical contact to see if there's any flutter in his heart. But thankfully, Erida's heartbeat remains perfectly normal. However, Seiha doesn't let her guard down. She educates Erida about the dangers of marriage between close relatives. Erida feels quite helpless, not to mention that he doesn't have any strange thoughts about his sisters. Even if he did, there's no blood relation between them. After finally getting rid of Seiha, Erida falls into a state of insomnia. Fortunately, by morning, Erida notices that his sisters are acting completely normal. Bonri is still joking around. On his way to school, Erida encounters a few of his other sisters, and they also behave just like usual. It seems that Erida is the one most affected by everything. His mind is completely in a mess all day. After school, he runs into Minami. This athletic girl is very popular, and her fans often ask for pictures with her. Erida can't help but feel that he has less charm with girls than his sister does. But soon, Erida regains his confidence. Minami has great athletic talent but is absolutely terrible at math and ends up failing her exam. Erida takes her to a karaoke place to help her study, but Minami completely doesn't understand. After a short while, she starts singing instead. Erida is touched by his sister's optimism and decides not to pressure her to study anymore. As they are leaving, Erida notices that Yokoyama already has a boyfriend. Minami picks up on her brother's unusual behavior and, having heard from Uka that Erida has a crush on Yokoyama, she spends the entire way home trying to comfort him. Encouraged by his sister, Erida starts to feel less depressed. Minami is like the sun, warming her family. She brings cake to Uka and even finds the missing headphones, completely resolving the tension between them. Life seems to have returned to normal, as if they are no longer affected by the news their adoptive father announced. The only exception is Erida and Kotono, who still feel a bit awkward when they're together. Whenever this happens, Seiha would appear like a ghost, reminding Erida not to have any indecent thoughts. Erida, in an attempt to avoid Seiha, goes to school, only to find Uka waiting to give him trouble. She urges Erida to confess his feelings to Yokoyama, but Erida refuses since Yokoyama already has a boyfriend. Just then, Uka is called away by a classmate who seems to have feelings for Erida. Flustered, Uka teasingly calls her brother a perv, and it seems she doesn't really want Erida to leave his single status after all. Soon, the weekend arrives, and Erida and his family head to the water park. Kotono's birthday party had a tense atmosphere, so they have agreed to come to the water park for a make-up celebration. Bonri and Erida go to buy snacks, while the others promise to wait at the spot. When Erida returns, however, he finds that none of his family members are there. He tries calling them, but no one answers. Carrying all those snacks, Erida feels exhausted, while Bonri has a small appetite, leaving Erida to finish them all by himself. During these moments of being alone, Bonri always enjoys teasing her younger brother. With just a few ambiguous words, she can make Erida's face turn red. This is one of Erida's struggles. After all, he's at an age full of hormones, and it's not easy to suppress himself. Erida tries hard to stay calm, but in the end, he still gets distracted and trips. Fortunately, the two then start to experience the water park attractions, and Bonri finally stops teasing her brother, focusing instead on the fun activities. After Cheyenne and the others finish their activities, they find themselves unable to get in touch with Erida. They decide to temporarily give up on trying to contact him and instead focus on enjoying all the attractions the water park has to offer. On Erida's side, he finally gets a rare chance to be alone with Bonri. He's curious about what his sister thinks regarding the fact that they don't share a blood relationship. For others, it might not have as much of an impact, but Erida has already been affected by Kotono's confession and Seiha's warning. He's troubled, but it's not something he feels comfortable telling Bonri. Bonri notices that her brother isn't in a good state and shares her thoughts with him. Even though they don't share a blood relation, she promises to protect him and their sisters. Bonri gently pats Erida's head, just like she did when they were kids. At that moment, a girl accidentally spills her drink on Bonri, and Erida immediately shields her with his body. This time, it's him protecting his sister. Bonri feels that Erida has matured, and during the rest of their time at the park, she can't help but take his hand. Later that night, the two groups finally reunite, while the two younger brothers and Kotono are away at the restroom. Seiha takes the opportunity to tell the rest of the group about Kotono's confession and the test she conducted on Erida. Uka hesitates for a moment, but then she reveals Kotono's previous confession to the sisters as well. The situation is now very serious, and it leaves all four girls deeply troubled. Since Kotono learned that she and Erida don't share a blood relationship, the suppressed feelings she has for him have resurfaced. They all agree to pretend they don't know about it for now, while observing Kotono and searching for a way to resolve the situation. Lately, Erida often hides in the bathroom to share his worries with Cheyenne. He feels that without the protection of a blood relationship, he is no different from a beautiful woman walking into a prison full of pervs, and the sisters are trying various ways to win his heart. Cheyenne deliberately teases Erida, saying that if the fact they're not related by blood had been exposed, every boy in the school would be jealous of him. Cheyenne doesn't understand Erida's troubles. Their family relationships are teetering on the edge of collapse. For example, Erida notices that Uka has been looking at him strangely lately, and he hopes it's just his imagination. For over a decade, they were told they were twins, which made their relationship particularly special. Then, Uka suddenly confesses her feelings to Erida, startling him so much that he nearly wets his pants in front of everyone. Uka explains that it's an admiration for him, not the affection that a woman has for a man. She's pleased that Erida didn't take advantage of Katono when she was confessing her feelings. Hearing this, Erida relaxes a little. What he doesn't know is that Uka is lying. In fact, this little girl actually has feelings for him too. To make matters worse, part of their conversation is overheard by Minami. Among the 5 sisters, she's the best at sports and outgoing, who never holds back what she wants to say. But this time, she hesitates. Minami really wants to know what happened between Uka and Erida, yet the uncertainty torments her. She tries several times to ask Erida about it, but in the end, she never musters the courage. Erida notices that Minami seems a bit off, even when he goes to take a bath. He keeps thinking about it and doesn't realize that Seiha is in the bathroom, ready to bathe. Erida scolds Seiha for not wearing clothes in the bathroom. Seiha teases him for overreacting. As a top student, she instinctively starts lecturing. In her view, after living together as a family for more than 10 years, they should already be very familiar with each other's bodies, and there shouldn't be any feelings involved. Erida feels helpless and goes back to his room. Just then, the eldest sister, Bonri, pays him a visit. It has been 2 years since she last entered Erida's room, and she comes to invite him for a date. The word date is something Bonri uses on purpose to tease Erida, as she enjoys playing with him like that. Her real intention is to fulfill her little brother's wish. Erida has long wanted a smartphone. At first, Erida thinks Bonri is just taking another prank on him, but what happens next leaves him genuinely confused. While Erida is picking out a phone, Bonri suddenly brings up something she once heard. When people are choosing phones, their view on choosing a partner can be reflected. Whether they care more about looks or inner qualities can be seen from whether they prefer a phone's design or its performance. Bonri often brings up topics related to romance in a seemingly casual way, and when she hears there's a discount for couples buying phones together, she deliberately initiates physical contact with Erida, trying to pretend they're a couple. Erida, worried their lie would be exposed, refuses Bonri's suggestion. After buying the phone, Bonri takes Erida to get ice cream, just like on a couple's date. Thankfully, she reins herself in a bit this time and doesn't take their intimate interactions any further. Instead, she and Erida reminisce about the past. When they were kids, they used to argue all the time. Whenever Katono got upset, she would hide in the closet. Uka acted more like the eldest sister than Bonri, always stepping in to uphold justice among them. Despite all the years that have passed, not much has changed. The moment Bonri brings up anything spooky, she still gets scared just like when she was a kid. At this moment, Katono is looking at a group photo from their trip to the water park, and her gaze always lingers on Erida. Suddenly, she sees a newly posted photo from Bonri, which is a picture of her with Erida. Katono already feels upset from jealousy, and what happens next pushes her to the brink of emotional collapse. Today, Bonri acts overly intimate toward Erida, all because of Minami. Minami is worried that things will become more chaotic if Uka gets involved too, as the matter between Erida and Katono hasn't been resolved yet. That's why Minami secretly asks Bonri to test Erida's feelings. The outcome turns out to be very satisfying for her. Just then, an accident happens. Minami mistakenly sends the message to the group chat. In it, she mentions that there probably isn't anything going on between Uka and Erida, although she immediately withdraws the message. The problem is, Katono has already read it. While everyone else is focused on Erida, Erida's attention shifts to Seiha. He notices that his second eldest sister has been zoning out lately, so he tries to comfort her, saying that if she ever runs into a problem, she can come to him for help. Actually, her problem is related to Erida. Last time, in order to protect Katono, she deliberately tried to seduce Erida to test his reaction. Things went awkward in the end. Erida didn't respond in a perverted way at all. Instead, it was Seiha who felt a bit excited. Seiha can't quite figure out the source of these emotions. To resolve her confusion, she suggests playing a little game with Erida. Erida refuses to go along with her test. That's when Seiha, like most older sisters, starts bringing up old favors, reminding him that she helped him improve his test scores just last month. Erida doesn't want to feel indebted to Seiha, so he reluctantly agrees. The test is essentially a spinning wheel game, where each spin randomly tells them to place a hand or foot in a specific area. The core of the game lies in the limited space available, so as the game progresses, physical contact between Seiha and Erida becomes inevitable. Seiha, usually as quiet as a cat, now acts like a hungry tiger. Erida, on the other hand, is like prey. He does his best to shift his posture and keep his distance from Seiha. At one point, Erida considers giving up, but he's afraid Seiha might misunderstand and think he's starting to have feelings for her. Feeling helpless, he decides to continue the game. As the game goes on, Seiha starts introducing dopamine, oxytocin, and serotonin, which can make people feel happy. In the early stages of love, the body releases large amounts of dopamine, and during physical intimacy between couples, oxytocin is released. Seiha has never been in a romantic relationship. Everything she knows comes from books and theoretical knowledge. That's why she needs Erida to act as the test subject in her experiment. Fortunately, the entire experiment does not get out of hand. After the test, Seiha confirms that she does not have romantic feelings for Erida. Like a playboy, Seiha leaves without hesitation and becomes indifferent the moment Erida loses his value. Unexpectedly, just after Seiha leaves, Uka arrives at Erida's room. She invites him to play a fighting video game. They usually only play this kind of game on holidays, so Uka's unusual behavior catches Erida's attention. Once the game begins, Uka wins several rounds in a row, unaware that Erida is distracted. When Uka gets excited from winning, she tends to make a lot of small movements, and all the physical contact causes Erida's mental chaos. Once Erida regains his focus, Uka starts losing repeatedly in the game. Not following sportsmanship, she decides to attack Erida in real life when she can't beat him in the game. This directly leads to even more frequent physical contact between them. While struggling, Erida accidentally pushes Uka down. Time seems to freeze, and both of them are stunned. Uka suddenly remarks that Erida has grown from a boy into a man. As she leaves, her cheeks are noticeably flushed. Neither of them realizes that Kotono is hiding in Erida's wardrobe. This unexpected situation sets off another unforeseen event. While Kotono and the sisters are watching a romance drama together, a confession scene comes up. They begin discussing topics related to love. Seiha takes a practical approach, considering many real-life factors. Uka hopes to meet the perfect husband like in a romantic manga. As for Minami, she only cares about if the couple falls for each other, and nothing else matters to her. These young girls each have their own understanding of love, and they keep talking late into the night. At this moment, Kotono suddenly calls out to her sisters and loudly confesses her feelings for Erida. She is certain that what she feels is not just a younger sister's affection for her brother, but the desire of a woman wanting to marry a man. Kotono senses that her sisters all have varying degrees of feelings for Erida, so to take advantage ahead, she bravely speaks her true thoughts. Everyone is stunned, as they never expected Kotono to be so bold. At this moment, Kaname is asking Erida how's everything going at home lately. Erida actually has a suspicion that Kaname must have had some special reason for revealing that they are not biologically related. He promises his adoptive father that as the eldest son of the family, he will definitely protect his family well. Kaname feels very relieved. Then he talks about Erida's love life, which makes Erida very shy, and he asks back about his adoptive father's own romance. Kaname rarely talks about his wife Chihiro. Since she passed away, only one photo of her is left at home. Kaname's impression of her can be summed up in 3 words: beautiful, young, and warm. Here, a story from Chihiro's childhood is revealed. She wrote a letter asking about the well-being of her brothers and sisters. This part carries limited information, so let's have a guess on what the author is trying to imply. The following story focuses on Minami, who is preparing for an important upcoming tennis match. Minami often gets distracted, constantly thinking about the night Kotono ran back to her room. Besides Kotono, Hinata also brings trouble to Minami. She is Minami's senior and a veteran member of the tennis team. Hinata has great tennis skills, and she has always held the position of the team's #1 ace. Until Minami, a genius, appeared and changed everything. Minami has the ability to compete for an Olympic gold medal, bringing countless honors to the school's tennis team. Therefore, Minami occupies the women's singles spots in all tennis competitions, and the sports student scholarship is hers as well. Hinata was originally recommended by her teacher to enter university with a scholarship and might have had the chance to become a professional tennis player. Now that Minami's brilliance has overshadowed hers, Hinata can only accept her parents' arrangements and give up university after graduating from high school to start looking for a job. In reality, many high school students enter society directly after graduation. They need to earn money to support their families. In the process, the talents of some are buried and go unnoticed. Therefore, Minami always feels like she took away her senior's opportunity. Yet, since they have a good relationship, she feels both guilty and determined to win a trophy for Hinata. Besides, Minami has a secret. She is actually injured and feels pain every time she trains and competes. The family's housekeeper accidentally discovers Minami's bandaged injury and tells Erida about it. It must be admitted that sometimes this boy does show the responsibility of an eldest son. Erida respects Minami's decision to compete, but he reminds his sister to go to the hospital for a thorough examination. Before that, Erida first checks Minami's injured ankle himself. As a way of thanks, Minami also helps her brother stretch his ligaments. During this process, the physical contact between the siblings makes Erida very shy. Fortunately, Minami is very outgoing and doesn't think of anything inappropriate. The troubles is that Kotono notices Erida and Minami have been getting closer lately, and she worries that she has gained another rival in love. Soon, an even bigger problem arises. On the day of Minami's tennis final, Erida wakes up very early. At first, everything seems normal. Bonri wears skimpy dresses and teases Erida as usual, making her brother feel nervous early in the morning. This usual atmosphere continues for 3 minutes until someone notices that Minami is missing. They ask everyone in the house, but no one has seen her. The important point is that Minami's tennis shoes are still at home. Minami comes home with a bunch of snacks, explaining that as a cheerleader, she doesn't need to be at the match too early. Erida is worried about her, and after questioning her, his suspicions are confirmed. Minami's injury has been discovered, and the tennis coach has benched her. In front of her brother, Minami acts cheerful, as if being sidelined doesn't bother her at all. Erida suspects she's just putting on a brave face, a theory confirmed when he talks to Shion. Shion happened to see Minami crying earlier that morning, clearly heartbroken about not being able to play. Knowing how much Minami wants to win this match for Hinata, Erida decides to help her get back in the game. They hit a traffic jam on the way, so Erida switches gears. He grabs a bike and pedals Minami to the venue. Erida gets on his knees and begs the tennis coach, explaining his sister's situation. Minami finally gets her chance to play, but the pressure is immense. Not only is she playing injured, but the match is already down to the final game. If she loses this game, her dream of giving Hinata a victorious farewell will be shattered. The combination of physical and mental stress takes its toll, and Minami doesn't play her best. Her final, crucial shot is called out, and she loses the match. It's a heartbreaking loss. After the match, Minami apologizes to Hinata, but no one blames her. Minami seems as cheerful as ever, but only Erida knows she's faking it again. He pulls her into a hug. At that moment, Minami can't hold it in any longer and breaks down crying. That evening, Minami finds herself thinking about Erida while she's in the shower. With so much happening recently, his support has helped pull her out of her slump. The bad news? It seems Minami, like her other sisters, is starting to develop special feelings for her brother that go beyond family. With Minami's crisis resolved for now, it's time to deal with Kotono's problem. As Kotono is getting ready for bed, Uka drops by, and their chat reveals some key information. Kotono's sudden declaration of love for Erida wasn't entirely genuine. She had noticed that everyone else seemed to have a crush on him and wanted to be the first to stake her claim. Uka tells Kotono that their feelings for Erida are just familial love and urges her to seriously think about her own feelings and not make a rash decision. But as Uka leaves Kotono's room, she's filled with conflicting emotions. She lied. In truth, Uka can't figure out her own feelings for Erida either. A few days later, Bonri shows up one night asking for Erida's help. She left something at school and needs to go back and get it. The eldest sister is terrified of the dark and ghosts and always needs someone with her on late-night walks. Bonri clings to Erida's arm nearly the whole time, and the sensation makes him incredibly shy. Just then, a school security guard walks by on patrol. Erida quickly covers Bonri's mouth and pulls her into a hiding spot. They're pressed together in an awkward position, making the atmosphere even more charged. Bonri is a mature woman, and Erida starts to feel a strange attraction toward her. But what happens next shifts Erida's focus. Despite her timid nature, Bonri chose to study nursing. When she was a child, she visited her adoptive mother, Chihiro, in the hospital. Bonri was devastated by Chihiro's illness, but a kind nurse helped her through it. That was the moment Bonri decided she would become a nurse. 2. To bring comfort to patients and their families. Of all the sisters, Bonri seems to be the one to worry about the least. Uka, on the other hand, is a magnet for trouble. Lately, she's been down, and even performed poorly on her exams. Seemingly to unwind, Uka decides to go to Mount Fuji for the weekend. Uka is soaking alone in a hot spring on the snowy mountain, completely unaware of the danger closing in. Days pass, and Uka still hasn't returned. It's as if she's vanished. Thankfully, after the last time she got lost, they installed a location-sharing app on her phone. Worried sick, Erida decides to take an overnight bus to Mount Fuji that very evening. When Uka sees Erida, she's startled, but also feels a mix of exasperation and gratitude. The inn is fully booked, so the two of them have to squeeze into a single room. While Uka is changing, Erida can barely breathe. In the cramped room, he struggles to keep his mind from wandering to inappropriate places. Just then, Uka brings up an old story. Their adoptive parents met on Mount Fuji. Chihiro had gotten into an accident, and their adoptive father appeared like a knight to save her. Uka isn't just making small talk. It seems she's hoping to meet her own knight on Mount Fuji, just like Chihiro did. At dawn, Erida wakes up to find Uka gone. The weather is terrible, with a thick fog drastically reducing visibility. Erida is extremely worried, and for good reason. Right now, Uka is lost and stranded in the mountains after a fall. Just as Uka is about to lose all hope, her knight, Erida, finally appears. At first, Uka tried to act tough, but with her foot injury, she could barely walk. So, in the end, Erida had to carry her on his back as they started down the mountain. They talked a lot on the way down. Uka mentioned a legend she'd heard, that if you bring a keepsake of a lost loved one to Mount Fuji, you can see them again. She had so much she wanted to tell her late adoptive mother, but sadly, she knew the legend was just a myth. Uka admitted she used to tell her adoptive father, can name, everything. She really adored him, but ever since she found out they weren't related by blood, things had felt strange. The whole family dynamic shifted, and she couldn't bring herself to open up to him anymore. Erida did his best to reassure her, telling her that blood ties don't matter. He'd always be there to listen. His coming all this way to save her proved it. They would be family for life. Uka didn't say a word. She was incredibly moved, just too shy to say what she was really feeling. Back at the lodge, they quickly bandaged her wound before heading down the rest of the way. Bonri and the others were already waiting at the base of the mountain. They'd been worried sick about Uka ever since her recent breakup, so they were massively relieved. On the drive home, Erida, completely exhausted, sat in the back and ended up falling asleep on Uka's shoulder. This made Uka's face turn beet red, her heart pounding faster than a race car. It wasn't until they got home that she realized what was wrong. Erida wasn't just tired, he had a raging fever and was nearly unconscious. He'd gotten completely soaked in the rain on Mount Fuji while saving her, and now he was seriously ill. Fortunately, Erida's sacrifice was worth it. Uka finally managed to overcome her inner turmoil, and thanks to him, she was able to mend her strained relationship with their father, Kaname, restoring the closeness they once had. The bad news was, a full day later, Erida was still sick. Katono and Minami were practically fighting over who got to bring him his meals. Bonri, worried that Katono might try something inappropriate while Erida was delirious, decided to send Minami instead, but the one they really should have been worried about was Uka. After getting home, she took a bath, and then went to Erida's room all by herself. Still not brave enough to express her feelings directly, she saw an opportunity while he was unconscious. Then, in a shocking move, Uka leaned in and gave him a kiss. As she left the room, she had no idea that Erida had been awake the entire time. Erida's mood was incredibly complicated in the following days. He and his family went to his adoptive father's vacation villa to escape the summer heat. Bonri teased Erida about having to sleep in the same room as his sisters. This made Erida even more flustered, especially when he saw Uka's lips, which always gave him strange ideas. While Erida was showering, Cheyenne suddenly walked into the bathroom. Fortunately, his younger brother wasn't there to confess his feelings. Otherwise, Erida would have had no idea how to deal with his emotions. It was Cheyenne's idea to come here to escape the heat. He found that his household registration was in this city and wanted to meet his biological parents. However, it turned out that the area was desolate, and no one lived nearby anymore. Erida had just finished comforting Cheyenne, helping his brother feel less dejected. Soon, Erida himself encountered a problem. He noticed his sisters looking at him strangely. First, Uka kept coming to Erida, deliberately asking him many questions about relationships. When she learned that Erida no longer had feelings for Yokoyama, Uka seemed very happy. While showering, her mind was filled with taboo thoughts about siblings marrying. Immediately after, Minami invited Erida to visit a park filled with roses, a place typically frequented by couples. Minami shyly asked her brother about his ideal type of lover, carefully remembering Erida's description. Suddenly, Minami told Erida that she already had someone she liked. This girl was usually very brave, but a bit timid when it came to love, and ultimately didn't say that Erida was the one she liked. Alright, a major challenge is coming up. The first part of the summer retreat plan is swimming in the mountains, which is incredibly difficult for Erida. So much has happened recently that he can't even calmly be around his sisters anymore. And of course, everyone is wearing swimsuits, which are quite revealing. He just shifted his gaze from Uka when Minami invited him to jump in together. Minami holds her brother's hand, her feelings incredibly complex. Erida doesn't notice Minami's unusual behavior. His attention is completely on Seiha. This girl is brilliant at studying but completely clueless in daily life. Seiha just lost her underwear. Erida is both shy and nervous. He's worried Seiha might have a wardrobe malfunction, so he proactively helps her retrieve her older sister's underwear. Next up is Bonri, the eldest sister. When she invites Erida to swim, she actively climbs onto his back. This directly leads to a lot more intimate contact between them. Erida is practically at his breaking point. He's at an age where his hormones are surging, making it hard to resist such temptation. Because Erida is so distracted, he doesn't hear Bonri's very quiet confession. Finally, it's Katono's turn. She has to go a long way to buy something. Erida, worried about his sister, accompanies her along the mountain path. Erida remembers Katono's previous confession, and his heart races. Luckily, Katono doesn't make any unusual moves. She's inspired by Erida's guidance and decides to reevaluate her relationships with her family members. That night, Erida thinks he can finally get some rest. But then, something unexpected happens again. He overhears Kotono, Minami, and Uka chatting. These three sisters confess their true feelings. They all actually like Erida. Minami even suggests that the sisters compete fairly. Well, congratulations! You've just finished another anime recap on my channel. Feel free to rate it in the comments section. I can't believe this anime ultimately turned into a harem, except for Seiha, who hasn't explicitly stated her feelings. The other sisters have all shown varying degrees of affection for Erida. Will this boy choose one of them to be his wife, or will he bring all of them into his harem? Let's look forward to the story in the next season. Also, my channel has full recaps of many classic anime, and I hope they can help you pass the time when you're bored.